Over the course of 41 seasons, Survivor has produced many memorable players. Whether it's due to them being great at the game, being a big-time personality, or a combination of both, there are multiple players every season that integrate their name in Survivor lore for the impact their presence added to Survivor. However, unfortunately there are also some players that played Survivor who are memorable for all the wrong reasons, whether it's because they have a nasty attitude, they're a quitter, or made a dumb move that still gets made fun of over 10 years later. But whether players are remembered for the good or bad things they did in the game, at the end of the day, they are still remembered by the hardcore and casual fans alike. But with that said, not every player in Survivor can make an impact, with even players who make the finale being forgotten about within a year, simply due to them just being there and not really adding much to the season. But despite some players having an on paper boring Survivor resume, there's one or two very unique things about these players that have made them iconic in one way or another to Survivor fans. What's going on, guys? I'm Flipmasters, and today we'll be looking at 10 Survivor players who are remembered for the oddest reasons. Whether there's a unique stat about them, or they did something completely out of nowhere, these 10 survivors aren't exactly known for breaking the game like Russell Hans per se, but they still have a place in Survivor history for one reason or another. So with that said, let's take a look at all those odd reasons. We start off with Julie Berry from Survivor Vanuatu. Despite making it to the final 5, Julie wasn't exactly the most interesting character in the world, especially considering she was sandwiched in between the iconic Amy and the final 4 characters of Vanuatu, were all far more important players that season than Julie. Still though, there's no denying how attractive Julie was in Vanuatu, and boy, did she take advantage of it. She self-admittedly used her assets to her advantage, and many people tab her as the original Parvati. And Julie was so attractive that even Jeff Probst couldn't contain himself, and after the season, Jeff got into contact with Julie, and shortly thereafter, the two started dating. Yes, believe it or not, the host of Survivor fell in love with one of the contestants. While there's not much info out there that really dives into their relationship, the two actually dated for nearly 3 years, but eventually ended their relationship in 2008. Still, I'm sure dating Jeff Probst is a dream for many females who play Survivor, and out of all the attractive females to play Survivor, it's Julie Berry that holds the distinction of being the girl that got Jeff to break. She may not have won the million, but man, she'll always be a legend.
Julie, Travis spoken.
We're going all the way back now to season 1 with number 9 to talk about the one and only Sean Kniff. Now to be fair, it is pretty tough to call any players from Borneo unmemorable since Survivor's first season was literally a global phenomenon. And while pretty much all players from Borneo are memorable in some regard, nobody has an odder reason for being remembered than Sean. Not only was Sean the odd man out in the Tagi Alliance, but his voting strategy is unanimously considered the oddest strategy used in Survivor history. Due to nobody really knowing how to play the game, combined with the fact that nobody wanted to hurt each other's feelings, Sean decided to make his strategy as fair as possible, and that was to vote in alphabetical order. Yep, starting with Colleen at the merge, every name Sean wrote down after was based on whose name came up next alphabetically. This is what caused Greg and Jenna to be the next ones to go, as the Tagi 4 realized that they would always have the majority if they voted with Sean. For all the legendary figures in Borneo, like all the Final 4, Sweetheart Colleen, and the hilarious Greg, Sean is right up there with all the legends for his alphabet strategy, and I think I can safely say, it's a strategy that will never be replicated.
I am not really employing any strategy. I'm going voting for Colleen today. I love her. She's cute, adorable, and nice to look at and fun to have around, but she's the first in a long list of alphabetical order. And she won't get another vote from me unless she pisses me off or something. But it's her turn today, being the first. Alphabetical order.
At number 8 is the noble one, Chris Noble. Now of course Chris was a big time character in Ghost Island, the most noteworthy player from that season outside of Dom and Wendell. And speaking of Dom, his rivalry with Chris is easily the highlight of the season, and is often considered one of the best rivalries in Survivor history. Not to mention, Chris deciding not to play his idol at the merge is often on par with James as the worst non-idol play in Survivor. But since Chris unbelievably decided not to play his idol, at least he got a fun Survivor stat out of it that will most likely never be broken. Chris became the first Survivor contestant ever to be voted out while not casting a single vote all season. In the pre-merge, his tribe won almost every media challenge, with him going to Ghost Island in the one they didn't win. So the merge tribal council was Chris's first tribal, yet he still didn't cast a vote. Not only was it stupid for Chris to not play his idol when he knew he was getting votes, had only 2 tribals to play it, and his rival literally played an idol, but Chris himself couldn't do anything votes-wise as he lost his vote in a game of chance on Ghost Island. So whether you remember Chris for his rivalry with Dom or a severe case of overconfidence, he will always be remembered as the only player in Survivor history to go home without casting a vote all season. And to add the cherry on top, he can't even rap.
Oh yeah, and finally, somebody had to say it. I'll say it. Stop rapping. You're trash. At rapping. You're garbage at rapping. You can't rap. You have no bars. Put the mic down, bro. Put the pen down, bro. Use an eraser.
At number 7 is the 7-foot-tall Mitchell. Now Mitchell has a couple fun facts about him. His 7-foot-tall frame makes him the tallest contestant ever, but Mitchell also holds the distinction as the first player in Survivor to be voted out without receiving the majority vote. In a game-changing moment in not only this season, but the history of Survivor, Tina got Colby to flip to her and Keith's side on the ride to Tribal Council, forcing a 3-3 tie. And since Survivor hadn't thought of a way to go about tiebreakers this early in the series, they decided to go the past mistakes route. Jeff informed Keith and Mitchell that their past would decide their future, and the player with the most past votes would go home. And due to a hinky vote from Keith at the previous Tribal Council, that vote saved Keith and sent Mitchell home in the pre-jury. Mitchell's very unfair elimination ended up causing a massive butterfly effect. The alliance that was formed here in Keith, Colby, and Tina ended up being the final 3, with Tina of course winning the season, Colby becoming the first Survivor hero, and this allowed Keith to hold the record for most average amount of days played in Survivor. Survivor also changed its rules regarding the trip to Tribal Council, and players could no longer talk to each other on the way there. And even though Survivor didn't directly fix it after Mitchell, Survivor eventually realized how unfair it was to send someone home without a majority vote, and eventually made the much more fair rock draw rule instead, to settle a tiebreaker. Don't say it, Flynn. Don't say it. Oh, fine. Mitchell for Game Changers too. At 6 is Jamie from Survivor Guatemala. To be frank, Survivor Guatemala is unanimously considered Survivor's most forgotten season, with Danny being the only newbie player to ever return, and pretty much all players from Guatemala, minus a select few, have been completely forgotten about in Survivor lore. But Jamie made a name for himself in Guatemala in quite the loud fashion. He and Bobby John had a heated rivalry during the season, and arguably became the closest we've ever seen to castaways actually duking it out.
The crew scored!
But not only is Jamie remembered for his extremely short temper, but he officially made the word blindside a universal term in the Survivor world.
Jamie, tribe has spoken.
Blindsided. Nice! Now that's how you vote somebody out.
Later.
Now, we had seen the term blindside used before, but it wasn't until Jamie's final impression that the word blindside became a regular term in Survivor, and I would even argue, turned the gameplay up a notch for future seasons to come, as players either wanted to pull off a sweet blindside on someone else, or they wanted to be blindsided instead of being told they were going home. I'm sure Jamie's a nice guy, but sometimes that's the way it goes. Your worst moments are the ones that people remember the most. One of the things that always drags down Micronesia as being in the Cagayan and Heroes vs. Villains tier of seasons for Survivor is that some people think the pre-merge is a little boring. But one thing this pre-merge did give us is one of the funniest moments in Survivor history. Chet is already memorable for a bunch of wrong reasons. He's often ranked with the likes of Jatia and Dan when it comes to challenge performance, and his quit basically killed Amy's game. But there was one moment in Chet's game that not only summed up his lack of challenge abilities, but I'm sure is also a big reason why he would go on to quit the game.
Joel trying to drag Chet takes a hard fall. Keep moving. 30 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Joel and Chet cannot catch Poverty and Eliza. Iri wins. Reward.
I hit my head.
I don't care.
I know.
I mean, I hate to laugh at the pain of others, but man, is this funny. At 4 is Angie from Survivor Philippines. Angie lasted only 3 episodes in season 25, but in that time, she made quite the impact. Her looks were so stunning that even Malcolm, a great Survivor player, couldn't contain himself when it came to her. But what makes Angie so great is a simple answer to Jeff at Tribal Council.
Finish that same sentence. If I could change one thing about this tribe.
That we could have cookies.
To be honest, after watching Matt sing, maybe they could have used a few extra cookies. Couldn't have hurt. Sticking with Survivor Philippines pre-merge boots here, we now have Dawson, the 5th boot of the season. And being that she was the 5th boot and was on the Kalaba tribe, the least interesting tribe out of the 3, you would think Dawson would be an absolute nobody. And to be honest, she pretty much should be. I mean, she was the only one to recognize Jeff Kent, so that's something, but other than that, even a superfan like myself couldn't tell you a single thing about her. But the reason why Dawson became so remembered was due to, well, quite the interesting exit.
Dawson, the tribe has spoken.
At number 2 is a player who changed the game for ladies her age for years to come, simply by just looking pretty, and that is Michaela Wingle. Michaela is remembered by Survivor fans for being at the crossroads of brand and hands, and yeah, being targeted by one of the least stable human beings to ever play Survivor, who also just so happens to be the nephew of Russell Hantz, is gonna make you a hot topic in the Survivor world. But the reason why Brandon was so gung-ho on Michaela was due to her reminding him of Parvati, who was obviously fresh on his and his uncle's mind. Brandon comparing Michaela to Parvati in a dangerous way was the unintentional birth of a new strategy among Survivor players for the next decade, and that was to target the young and attractive girl, simply because she gave off vibes that she could use her looks and charm to her advantage and be a Parvati 2.0. Michaela came into Survivor being her charmful self, and because of that, not only did she get the ambiguous distinction of being the first ever Parvati 2.0, but this label put a bullseye on many young females in Survivor for the next decade.
I call her Poverty because she's using her seductive ways in her young girl attitude to kind of get people in and get attention. It's the ones that are good looking and seductive that you want to get rid of.
Michaela, the tribe has spoken.
At number 1 is everyone's favorite metalhead, Billy Garcia. Billy was the second boot of Survivor Cook Islands, which is usually one of the most forgettable boots of every season. But Billy didn't just become a memorable player during his short stay, he became a freaking Survivor legend. After being lazy the first 6 days, I too had no choice but to throw a challenge to get rid of Billy. But even though Billy was an outcast on his tribe, he did find his true love on Survivor.
My prize was that I fell in love in this game. Love at first sight. Her name is Candace. And in between...
Candace from Roro tribe.
Yeah, after the last challenge, we sort of mouthed the words I love you to one another, and so that was my prize, and my prize was her.
He may not have won the Cook Islands, but I think Billy Garcia is the true winner of the season. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know in the comments of some odd reasons why you remember certain Survivor players. If you like this video, then smash that like and subscribe button as I post weekly Survivor content. With all that said, thank you once again, and I'll see you next time.